Kia ora, good evening. The tragic triple fatality of 3 Southland men late Friday night has rocked the small communities of Waikai and Riversdale, who are mourning their loss. 39-year-olds Christopher Simpson and Matthew McKee, along with 59-year-old Ewan Christie, were travelling from Waikaia when the Toyota Hilux they were in struck a concrete bridge near Freshford. The 3 occupants were found dead at the scene by emergency services, including local fire, ambulance and police, many of whom knew the victims. Post-mortems were undertaken today, while weather conditions and alcohol are being looked at as part of the investigation, which is being undertaken by the Serious Crash Unit.
Our hearts go out to that local community. The 3 men are locally well known in the community. It's obviously a small, well-knit, strong community, and it will be very badly affected. Our local staff also know some of those families as well, so and also the fire service and ambulance would have attended, no doubt knew them as well. So it's tough for everybody, but it's just unfortunately one of those things.
What support are you offering?
We've got our local victim support involved, and also welfare officers as far as our internal goes, and those are matters that we'll just continue to work with the families. It's just a timely reminder just to drive to the conditions, but as we're leading into the duck shooting season opening next week, it's also just another reminder with alcohol, and just to ensure that people are being very conscious of making sure that everyone's safe during the duck shooting season, which for us is quite a big event, as we know, in Southland.
The search for the missing 7.5 metre yacht, the Munetra, has been scaled back. The operation now in a limited continuous search phase.
The vessel has not been sighted since it left Bluff Harbour on the 16th of this month, and grave fears are now held for the skipper and his 2 sailing companions after they failed to reach their destination, Preservation Inlet in Fiordland. Emergency services will continue to regularly receive and evaluate the latest information supplied from the Rescue Coordination Centre about tidal patterns, current movements and debris already located to identify potential actions or directions of future searches. Yesterday, an aerial search was conducted around the Muttonbird Islands, and an Air Force Orion searched west of Stewart Island. Police acknowledged the huge effort of the whole search team, and in particular the many volunteers from the local commercial fishing community. The names of the occupants of the vessel have not yet been released, as next of kin have yet to be informed.
Yesterday, increasing political pressure forced a policy rethink from the government, with Associate Minister of Health Peter Dunn announcing retailing of all legal highs would be made illegal until testing proves they are safe for public consumption. The government will rush through changes to the Psychoactive Substances Act 2013 when Parliament returns from recess next week. Hunter Andrews asked MP for Invercargill, Eric Roy, why government chose to react now, 8 months after the adoption of the legislation in July 2013.
We've reacted to a number of things, and one of those was the expression from the community at large that what we put in place wasn't working. And so we've responded to that, and what we're going to do now is just shut down all of these drugs, the 41 that were approved subject to there being no harm. We've now found out that there is some harm, and from the government's point of view, I'd like to think that we've reacted because what we've done wasn't working. Perhaps why it wasn't working is that the tools weren't picked up as well as we'd expected by the Ministry of Health and by local authorities, who could have been a bit more vigilant about this whole process.
What do you feel as a local MP, though? Are you relieved? Is this the sort of legislation that you actually vote for last year but you have reservations about? Or
well,
was that your thought?
Yeah, I certainly asked a lot of questions about the effectiveness last year, and was mindful. If you go back to the first one we banned was BZP, which was a cattle drench, and kids were abusing their bodies on that, and we banned that. It wasn't very long before other things started cropping up. Every time we banned one, they'd be reformatted and appeared in another way. So I haven't seen exactly how the legislation is intending to do this, but certainly the 41 that have been given interim permission are going to be taken off the table. And that's a great start. And I've had a number of constituents in this town saying to me, Eric, it's not working. And so for about 6 weeks, I have been expressing that view very clearly to our policy people, and we've been working on a way that we could do this for about 6 weeks. Our hand has been forced a little bit earlier than we were planning to do this under urgency, so there could be no stockpiling. But there was some other activity which brought this into an announcement. That's what we're going to do.
Well, the Labor Party possibly trying to pip you at the post.
Well, look, that might or might not be the case. There are other expressions of concern by other parties as well. So I think there's a degree of unanimity that we need to move against something which is a real blight on the community and particularly our young people. The thing that we need to be mindful of is that young people have got an incredible desire to blow their minds. And if we go back to the 80s and 90s, it was on ADOS glue and petrol and a whole range of other materials. We're likely to see that increase again, because what happened there is that these psychoactive drugs kind of took that place. And we haven't solved the problem, we've shifted it. And if we think that young people wanting to blow their minds is going to go away just because we've shut this down, we're deluding ourselves. There's a significant problem that the community has to buy into. And that's what the last bit of legislation did. It put the onus back onto the community. That hasn't worked. We'll shut these out, but we've got a problem of ongoing addiction. We've got a problem of young people wanting to stew their brains for some reason that I don't understand.
Meanwhile, Southland District Mayor Gary Tong is delighted with the banning of legal highs and says the challenge now is to support those Southlanders who have become dependent on the products. Hunter Andrews asked the District Mayor whether the government's reassessment of the legislation had taken him by surprise.
The first I heard of any political awareness of it was when Winston Peters early in the day had mentioned something about it, and then obviously, bang, out it came.
What will happen to that proposed legislation locally? Will that cease the hearing of submissions and things like that for the time being?
We still have to proceed with our LAP, and the submissions will remain. There's my understanding that there's going to be some inquiries with central government as to where we actually fit now, so we will stay with the status quo with that at this stage.
Now the shift, really the emphasis is shifting now, because we're going to have a lot of people that are quite obviously dependent on these substances within the community. Do we have the mechanisms and the resources in place to deal with what could be quite a large number needing help?
Yes, there are people needing help now that can only escalate. There will be people coming down off these highs and will have effects on their families, effects on our community services, effects on the police, our health providers. I think we have to be prepared for that.
There's not a lot you can do though at local level. This is more central government issues with health, isn't it?
It is central government, and it's stuff that these people are trained in doing, and they've been dealing with it. We heard the stories at Winton, the ambulance drivers and that have been dealing with it now for 18 months to 2 years. Dare I say it, are they used to it? Probably not. Let's hope it gets less to nil.
It is quite a turnaround though for a government when you had a whole of Parliament, bar one, vote for this legislation, to have a matter of 7 months later to have it actually these banned. Would you have wanted them to be banned immediately so that that sort of research could have taken place?
Absolutely, and I just caught a clip of our Prime Minister saying that this morning on television, that they should have looked at that, and that's great to hear that. You know, they are admitting that possibly they've done wrong.
Stay with us. Still to come, taggers at Stadium Southland are caught on camera and the police want you to identify them. Welcome back. Despite reports by local media that offenders seen tagging Stadium Southland and CCTV footage have been apprehended, police confirmed today this is not the case. The newly finished Stadium Southland's walls, the velodrome entrance and several outbuildings nearby were vandalised with graffiti late last week. Several other spots in central Invercargill and a school have also been tagged recently, possibly by the same taggers. Senior Sergeant Maggie Windle of the Invercargill Police says they are still seeking information. Anyone who may know the assailants, who the assailants are, or has information that could help police in their inquiries is asked to call 0800 Crime Stoppers or Invercargill Police on 211 0400. A plaque was unveiled outside the Invercargill City Council Administration building today to mark Workers' Memorial Day. Rail and Maritime Transport Union General Secretary Wayne Butson was in the city to attend the midday unveiling.
Terribly poignant to actually have somewhere where workers, their families, their unions, even employers in a lot of cases, can come together for a short period of time once a year and just remember our fallen comrades on the battlefield of the workplace.
And we're talking about many years, aren't we?
We are.
There are many dangerous industries in Southland, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, agriculture, of course, forestry, railways, used to be terribly dangerous since 2008, thankfully. We haven't had any fatalities. Ports, we continue to have fatalities there, of course. There are a lot of dangerous industries, and yes, there's not a crime to have a dangerous industry. What is a crime, in my view, is to have an industry that kills. And so actually we all need to make sure that people can come to work and go home safe with all of their health and their faculties and their limbs intact.
What are your union's specific concerns at the moment? I know we're hearing of lots of deaths in forestry and things, but what are specific concerns?
I think the specific concern around safety at the moment is that a lot of people are running out agendas on safety, but actually in a lot of cases we're not doing it together. And so, as I said in my speech, I don't think employers can do it on their own. I don't think government can do it on their own, and unions definitely can't do it on their own. And so the fundamental key for New Zealand to turn around its current shameful workplace health and safety record is to embrace tripartitism. That's the significant difference between New Zealand and the other international jurisdictions. They just all see safety as being something that actually unites them and doesn't divide them. We're yet to learn that in New Zealand, but I think we're learning fast.
The late timing of Easter and, in some countries, school holidays may have affected the number of international visitors to New Zealand in March.
Visitor numbers were down 6% during March this year compared to the same month last year, with more than 250,000 less people venturing to our shores. For the year to March 2014, visitor arrivals numbered 2.75 million, with the top 5 sources of visitors coming from Australia, China, United States, United Kingdom and Germany. Meanwhile, New Zealand residents took 148,000 overseas trips in the month of March, down 5% on March last year, according to Statistics New Zealand. Over the year, Kiwis took 2.2 million trips, an increase of 2% over 2013, with the most popular destinations being Australia, the United States, Fiji and the United Kingdom.
Less lamb exports over the past 6 months have been offset by an increase in average lamb values. Lamb exports fell 2.5% by volume over the first half of the 2013-14 season, but prices rose 14% in average value. Beef and Lamb New Zealand released figures today that show lamb exports rose $1.33 billion free on board, up 11% on the same time last year, averaging just under $8,500 per tonne over the 6 months. The European Union accounts for 42% of New Zealand's lamb exports, while North Asia receives a third. A rise in demand from China for mutton carcasses saw exports more than double, reaching 36% of total volumes exported. Next up on sport, highlights of the weekend's Super 15 clash between the Sharks and the Highlanders. That's after the weather next from the news team. Good night.